I personally practice almost all the lessons in this book. In fact, I started practicing them long before I even knew that this book existed. So when I finally read it, it only then served as a validation of that, and also just to show that perhaps what they share in this book is common financial sense. So I love this book a lot. Welcome to part 2 of my 2-part series where I break down the lessons that I've got from the richest men in Babylon, the success secrets of the ancients, the most inspiring book on wealth ever written by George S. Clason. My name is Adelaide and I like sharing the life lessons that I get from the books that I've read. If you haven't watched part 1 of this 2-part series, I would advise you to find it here. It should be here or here, and learn the lessons that I've given in part 1, because they will benefit you to have the fuller picture of all the lessons. As you already know from part 1, Akkad is the main character. He's the richest man in Babylon. He shares with us his wisdom and the secrets that he used to accumulate wealth for himself. He shares the 7 cures for a lean purse. The first one: earn a living and keep 10% of your earning. This is what Akkad meant when he said start fattening thy purse, which is really start increasing or growing your bank balance. In ancient times, earning a living was most of the times laboring, farming, working on land, being a peasant, being a merchant, and things like that. In modern day context, it's formal or informal employment or self-employment. You need to be finding means and ways of actually acquiring some money. It actually just boils down to work and planning and being wise. There's no magic about it. When you have done that, whatever it is that you earn, you cannot spend all of it. It can only accumulate and grow if you're spending less than you're earning. 90% is what you spend, 10% you keep for yourself. This is where the pay yourself first term that is coined against George S. Clason comes from. Even when your income increases, you will still maintain the 10%, because then in that way you're compounding your savings. If you're finding it hard to keep your expenditure within the 90%, you need to have a list of all your expenditure and review it and see what's sufficient and what is supposed to be removed from that list. Once you've got an income, be wise in terms of how you spend your money. The only way to start accumulating wealth is to spend less than you actually earn. Lesson number 2 is budget and control your expenditure. It really just builds onto the very first lesson. It's all very related. So how do you control your expenditure? It's very interesting that budgeting and things like that were as pertinent at that time as they are now. Of course, now with technology, you can start to use apps like mint.com, where you can plot your income versus your expenditure and so come up with a budget each month. And it's easy to then see where some of your money is leaving your pockets unnecessarily. And so you cut off those that are not important. If you've got a problem with expenditure where you literally have impulses that get you to spend very quickly, one of the tips that I've learned over time is hold on to your money, stay for at least 24 hours. See whether or not you still have that burning desire to buy whatever it is that your impulses want. If after 24 hours you feel that you do not need it, then you do not have to buy it. You do not have to spend money on it. You probably should not be having it in your monthly expenses, and so you cancel it out and it goes away. Things that we can remove, like when you eat out, when you could be eating in because it's for fun, you could lessen that if it's actually eating into beyond your 90% savings. When you buy exorbitantly expensive clothes because you want to show off to your friends, to your relatives, to your girls, to your boys, you could reduce that. If you're making unnecessary trips as well, you could pool transport together with others if it's school drop-offs or if it's going to work. And save. It's really a matter of analyzing, breaking your budget down and being honest with yourself to say what actually needs to stay and what can go away. We as humans have got our own desires for pleasures that may not always be justifiable. And so if we're not honest with ourselves, we may actually blow more than 90% at a time. If you're using anything more than 90% according to the richest man in Babylon, it says you're living outside your means. Lesson number 3, take advantage of investments and compounding. And Akkad in his language, his ancient language, says, make thy gold multiply. Once you've got your money, it has to work for you. And we've all known and had, even right from school, to make use of the compounding effect on our earnings. It's not the best to save only and keep your money in the bank, because you may not get the biggest returns and the best returns for yourself, but you can invest in schemes and in programs that you know very well that will give you good returns. So it could be in stocks, it could be in bonds, it could be in property, it could be in land that appreciates in value. So what ACAD is saying is that make your money work for you, make it multiply, make it have a multiplying compounding effect, so that over time, even that little 10% you put is multiplying while it waits. So this can actually grow exponentially. And this is how people get wealthy, because it's very hard to get wealthy on a month-to-month basis from our monthly earnings. If by wealth we mean that you are rich such that you've got more than enough to spend, we know very well that the average person who has a job, who is employed, who has a salary, does not get rich. But you can be brainy, working your way up to riches, which is by using compounding. Lesson number 4 to cure a lean purse is invest wisely and protect your assets. So ACAD says in his language, guard thy treasures from loss. Even though we need to multiply our money and be wise and clever about it in terms of compounding our profits and our income and our savings, we need to watch out for those ill advisors that are actually waiting to squander our money. So a lot of them exist these days. I think the average person should look at the commonly known stocks, bonds, property, those types provide a better safety net rather than the riskier types that are high risk, high rewards, with the way that everybody's trying to make a buck out of anyone who's got money to spend. Yours is not to spend, yours is to invest and multiply and make sure that it does so. If it's not going to do so, if you're not sure of it, do not do it. Lesson number 5 is acquire property, which ACAD says own thy own home. A man provides proper happiness and grounding for his family when his wife and children have got enough space around them to play around and to grow herbs and to just feel that they have an environment that is their own. It's very important to own your property, because even as you pay your mortgage, you've got equity growing on your side. You may be able to even claim some of the property taxes back in your tax returns to your federal government or to your national government. You may be able to use your property for rental if you've got multiples of them and you're only living in your primary property. You may be able to actually change your property the way you want without restrictions that actually come when you're in a rental system. If you are renting a property, it would be good to look honestly at your situation and see whether or not you could actually save up and acquire that property. Because ACAD says when you own your property, you're well on your way to acquiring wealth. These days we can acquire multiples of them. When you manage to use one property as collateral for another, you can actually acquire more than one and start to use some as rentals. And some are doing it from a very young age. It does not have to wait until you are retiring or towards retirement age. Lesson number 6, have life and financial insurance. ACAD, in his words, said, ensure a future income. So this one definitely is a no-brainer in this day and age, because this is talking about financial as well as life insurance. So like I said before, we're only ever in control of this very moment and the very next moment, or tomorrow, or weeks or days or months afterwards. We are not in control. When you've got financial insurance, then your family can be taken care of if something happens to you and you cannot work anymore. When you've got life insurance, if you happen to pass away, perhaps unexpectedly, or even because you're fallen sick, it's terminal, and perhaps people can expect that someday you're going to pass on, your family can be taken care of. I know that I sound like an insurance ad, but these are important. While we're able and are healthy today to work and provide ourselves with wealth, that may not happen in the future, but we still want that wealth we accumulated to work for us. And the best way to do that is to get life or financial insurance. And the last lesson, lesson number 7, is cultivate your earning potential, increase thy ability to earn. So ACAD says he used his time to acquire skills and knowledge so that he could increase his earning potential. If you're going to earn any income and actually increase it, you have to increase your value. And increasing your value comes with acquiring new skills and providing more services. Without any of this, you cannot really change and move from where you are. It could just plateau, Your earnings could just flatten out and you don't accumulate wealth the way we're talking about, that we're saying this book is advising us to do, which is to acquire, to build, and to accumulate the wealth. And that can only come through increasing your value in your service provision. These days, people have their main jobs, but they also have side hustles where you probably work on your passion, on something that you enjoy on the side that also gives you an income. That is another way of actually making sure that you increase your income. You can have a side hustle or you can have multiple income streams. It all takes just being wise. As you age, you want to work less, but it does not mean that you want to earn less. So that was our lesson 7. And having done all that, Akkad, the richest man in Babylon, advises that when a man has acquired all the wealth that he needs to have some self-respect. He says, self-respect in a man is when he honors his debt. He pays off his debt. The second way of showing self-respect that Akkad shares is that you have responsibility for your family. Take care of your family. And the third one that he mentions is that we have compassion for those that are less fortunate. So these are the 7 ways to increase your purse size, to increase your bank balance, which is to fatten your purse, as it is said in this book, The Richest Man in Babylon. Let me know your thoughts and comments on these 7 cures for a lean purse in the comment section below. A couple of points on what I did not like about this book. So the first thing that I did not enjoy about this book is its old, archaic, medieval language. There's nothing wrong with that Shakespeare type of language, to be honest. It's just not for me. I'm just not a fan of it. The second thing I did not enjoy is the absence of any female tones in this book. Right from its title, which says The Richest Man in Babylon. There's no richest woman in Babylon in this book. And I totally understand, because at that time female representation was pretty much absent, probably. It was only ever spoken about when they were referring to their families and their wives. But you should not worry about that. If it worries you, then I would advise that you read it as if it's just a universal they. So that's the second thing I did not like about this book. Besides these 2 small items, this is a must read for everyone. I think the average person that I know has read this book. And if you haven't, I would urge you to read it, because you would be glad that you read it. Do not take for granted the simplicity that comes across in this book. Akkad himself says truth is always simple. So I hope you enjoyed this video this week, which is the second part of the 2-part series where I broke down the lessons that I get from The Richest Man in Babylon. If you haven't seen part 1 of this 2-part series, then do click here. It should be here or here to go to part 1 of the videos, because you should have actually watched that first before watching this one. Part 1 covers the general wealth lessons that I think are very important, because they create that base of discipline that you must have before you even start to think of acquiring and building and accumulating wealth. I thoroughly enjoyed sharing this with you, and see you in the next book that I'll be reviewing. Cheers for now.